workshop on how to tell powerful stories. And I want to introduce Roy Terry, who is an executive communication coach and is often called the Silicon Valley pitch doctor. He is trained and practiced in many speaking disciplines, including NLP, keynotes, improv, stand-up, and theater techniques, which is amazing. He has coached many founders on pitching from Silicon Valley to India and Africa. He helps entrepreneurs develop unique messages and business leaders create innovation in the corporate world. His goal is to help all leaders uncover and deliver their own powerful vision. So, without further ado, Roy Terry.
Hey, everybody, cheers, welcome. I'm going to make a claim that whatever stories you're using in the pitch and what you're starting.
Your microphone.
Brad. Google is such a great brand, I trusted him. Is it working? I feel powerful.
It's working.
So it was a struggle to get here. This didn't happen on the trip, but I'll get to that. I would like you to consider, even though we're in the midst of this sort of celebratory thing, and it's wonderful, the vibe in this room is fantastic, even though the room is a lot like a wide-bodied gentleman here. But we can use that. We're all going on a journey, so we'll use that. Even though the vibe is celebratory and stories are wonderful, stories are, they're like the heroes of the presentation world. Stories are like puppies, they're like baby ducks, they're just so lovable. Everyone is enthusiastic about stories. And stories can transform the world. You know, most of adult movies are really cartoons, but the story keeps people spending $15 to go and watch a cartoon. However, I have a clicker. I'm really empowered. Thank you very much. There is trouble in Storyland, and I say that based on my experience as a pitch coach and as an executive coach. And the trouble has to do with the fact that we love stories so much. In fact, on places like Forbes and Inc., you will see these articles about, don't pitch me, don't give me a presentation, just tell me stories. And of course, you like TED Talks? I love TED. So we have some famous TED Talks that are built around stories, especially actually prominent females. So Amy Cuddy, for example, is the #2 TED Talk of all time, and she has an incredible personal story. Who's familiar with her? She's a hero for me, so I'm going to refer to her more than once. So with stories, there is this sense that they're so wonderful, and we can celebrate them, and they're so great, and then maybe our stories aren't getting as much traction as we want. And maybe we don't understand what we're trying to do with different stories. So the goal of this session is to get us to think pretty deeply about what makes a story, how do you enhance it, how do you twist it to your purpose, and I do mean twist, and then to practice live. So I'm going to invite, in the second half, I'm going to invite 4 or 5 entrepreneurs to come on up here. So there are some background things I'd like to mention as well. So this is a female founders summit. What's the male person doing here? I'm not sure. I'm happy to be here. I'm delighted. So thanks, Sherry, and the organizers. Word of mouth. But there's more to that I think we did not leave unsaid. We are living in a pretty appalling time, and some of the events and situations that lead to it being appalling have to do with the treatment of women. Not only in the recent scandals, but in the startup world and the corporate world, and the fact that women basically have a double or triple standard by which they're evaluated, and that comes to the fore when they're doing presentations. So how does she look? Is she too sweet? Is she too serious? It isn't really a fine line. I believe we can expand the line and create more flexibility. That's me as a man, but that's all I got. So, how this links back to storytelling is, stories are a source of power and persuasion, and we certainly need them in the pitching world and in the corporate world, whether we're marketing, whether we're talking to the team, or whatever. And if you know some of the craft, which is what we're going to be covering, you will be able to increase the power of your stories and more impact. So are you okay with this? Sound all right?
Yes.
It's like I'm waiting for the chart, the drink cart. Yeah. The wine body. Okay. So we know this is wonderful about stories, that they can transform the audience and they can take us on a magical journey. And I don't know actually who this TED speaker is, but I mentioned Amy Cuddy, and let's see, there's Brene Brown with empathy. Jill Below, I think, talks about her experience of actually being a neuroscientist and having a stroke and processing that. Amazing. So these are the 3 women, among others, that came up in the top 10 Google Docs of all time. So there's this incredible power. People love it, and people will feel treated if you tell them a story. What I would like, because I'm saying we need to kind of get behind the craft, I'm curious, what would be your 1-sentence definition of a story? And I worked on this a lot. I'm not sure I got it personally, but one sentence definition? What the heck is this thing we keep calling a story?
The journey.
Thank you. Oh, I love this. Let's stick with this. Is a great word. It goes right with what I was thinking too. Anyone else? What is your 1-sentence definition of a story?
Engaging.
Thank you. Engaging. Sharing. Yes, I love this. You guys are on it. Empathetic. Yes. Journey. That's 2 for journey. Sorry, what? A journey of how things came to be. You get the prize for the most poetic. Thank you very much. That's delightful. You guys are very similar to the way I would think too. I believe that we need to have a very generic, very broad definition of a story. And this is what I came up with, as kind of a quasi-technical thing. A story is a communication episode in which the receiver is on a journey or a process of discovery. And that could be, so I deliberately didn't say words or anything about verbal, because pictures can tell you stories as well. But I do think the key thing is this discovery. The sense of we want to know more. And that, of course, is very, very compatible with the idea of a journey, because a journey is one thing after another. So yes, and now, all of the detail I'm going to talk about, and we're going to practice, has to do with making that experience more powerful, more relevant, and more long-lasting for the audience. Because you're entrepreneurs, you are promoting companies, who is interested in fundraising, say, in the next year? Yeah, so people do not go to pitches for the experience. So you can have the greatest story ever, but really they're going to be convinced or to find out and to make a decision. And that's why there's a category of stories for that I'll be explaining. Okay? I am really open to being interrupted and even contradicted. So please feel free, chime in. Stories do particular work for startups. And I say this having been a pitch coach for about 5 years here in the Valley and heard pitches from all over the world. And there's some certain key functions that is really helpful to have stories for in a startup. So number 1 is, what was your inspiration that a problem was serious enough that you needed to work on? You needed to create a company to solve it. In fact, as we go through these, anyone who feels like they've got one they want to share, you need to jump up and come up and we'll hear it. So this is a big deal because, as you know, VCs and angels are often extremely interested in the team. You know, what is the passion of the individual? What's their commitment? How deeply do they appreciate the problem they're addressing? And how, do they have empathy for the potential clients? So having a story of either personal loss or frustration or some kind of yucky thing that left you feeling kind of annoyed or mad or motivated that, hey, this stuff should not happen like this. I'm going to fix this. This is the passion to inspiration story. Has anyone got one of those? Thank you. I'm not going to, try to embarrass you right now, but you consider coming and sharing if you like later. Okay, what else? Well, you're also probably very aware that probably the biggest first filter for many VCs is, what's the size of the market that this new company is addressing? You know, if they truly got traction, could we be looking at a unicorn or something really substantial? So having a story which illustrates the customers being really enthusiastic or charged up or excited about using your product or your service is fantastic. This is a kind of an inside pitching idea. The lessons learned story means there will be often cases probably where you'll be having conversations with people who either join the team or they're excuse me, a VC, something like that, and they're kind of quizzing you about, you know, how are you working out your market strategy? Or, you know, how did you come to have this particular timeline? Or what's your go-to-market? And if you have stories about how you learned, so the point of this little story is to show you as savvy, someone who's reflective and who's learning and changing course and always you know, observing how things are going and changing as need be. Great story to have. And this is the story about your solution. The story of how some particular customer or group, maybe ideally you didn't even know they existed, they got some of your product, they used it, and they were like, oh, this is amazing, we're forming a whole group around it. Questions or comments about these guys? These are fundamentals, I think. But then we come to this question. How powerful is yours? And I'd be interested in some feedback, a little candid. Has anyone sort of felt, this story deserves to get more power or get more response and it isn't? Certainly happened to me as a speaker. Yeah. So even though the story is such a simple thing, so I can tell you the story, I can tell you 5 different stories about what's up with this, or how it was to drive here, or you know, anything. But usually, unless you capture the person and get them flowing with you on a discovery and connect with them and stay going, and it stays really clear for them, they will possibly drop off your narration. So it's really, really important. That's why there's a craft of stories. And now one of the areas I've looked into in coaching speakers is, gee, what does Hollywood do? What do scriptwriters do? And it turns out it's extremely intricate. And it's not a place we're going to go, but if you've read it all, you've heard of something called the hero's journey, which is a formula for a lot of popular hero movies. And there's the idea of the 3-act script. There is, in fact, the book I've started reading now has 23 actions that the hero has to take in any successful Hollywood movie. So it gets extremely intricate. It's a big, involved industry, but the point is that it's important because you're doing something very delicate. You're balancing someone's imagination in your hand. And it's so easy for them to slip out. You've got to keep them, you know, with you. So I can be this guy. I identify totally with this guy.
Are you Irish?
Last name Terry, possibly. I'm not sure.
Did you ever wear a skirt?
Did I ever wear a skirt? Now that's a little personal. Not that I recall. Not generally.
So how can you say?
I'm on the news. Excuse me.
How can you say you can be this guy?
Excuse me?
How can you say you can be him?
I can sympathize. We can empathize. You know, we empathize across species, across planets. It's weird. Emotion is so flexible. Okay. So I don't want to be pushy or in your face, so I'll let Don Valentine do it. I don't know if you can see this in the back. Oh, yeah, you do. So he's a pretty smart guy, and he's been around a lot, and he was, original investor in Apple and Atari, and some huge home run companies. And actually, this is my belief. I 100% agree with this based on coaching people for pitching, because presentation in general and pitching and storytelling are kind of unnatural acts. Seriously. Because we're used to being conversational. And when you have a group, the conversational style can break down pretty badly. Because you have to be more clear, more sequential, you have to give more guidance and nurture with a group than you would just in a one-to-one. But we're not trained. So I hope the rest of the session helps you out with this.
So he is trained?
He's pretty good. I watched some of his YouTube stuff at like the Stanford Graduate School of Business. And yeah, he's pretty good. He gets a lot of laughs. So actually getting laughs is really helpful. That's like putting fuel in your tank. You do know you know Sequoia.
Yes.
Yeah, Sequoia. Okay. I want to debrief, even at this stage, with you all a little bit. I have a whiteboard here, potentially write things down. May I hear some of your challenges or maybe your interests that you want to cover? Yeah.
Your computer battery is going to die.
Brad, your computer battery is going to die. Calling Brad. Someone will help. I see minions are springing into action.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Was that a story? Interesting. We surely went there, didn't we?
It's a challenge.
Yes.
So when you're pitching to investors, what is the story that they really want to hear typically, right?
When you're pitching to investors, what is the story they really want to hear typically? Well, there are like 4 or 5 main ingredients. So I put up a list of kinds of stories. Really, there's a whole bigger story, which is, does this company deserve to exist, and is it addressing a sizable market with an innovation that's going to win? That's the premise. So they want to hear any super exciting, so the ideal story, super exciting, a breakout kind of fact about the company or the team. In their background, the technology, the market timing, etc. So I realize this is maybe not that satisfying.
No, actually, it's
So you guys, you've heard of a guy named Mark Andreessen. He was with Netscape, so he's another kind of fixture in the VC firmament. What he says about startups, and I think this is useful to understand, because you're going to be pitching, so a lot of you. It is a game of outliers. So funding you all, and for whatever your talents and abilities and so on, it's a long odds game. And his advice, Mark Andreessen's advice was, look for amazing strengths. So whatever you got that you can feature, that is like a knock your socks off kind of achievement or qualifications or innovation or market virality, you lead with that, you feature that. Other questions for the rest of the session or comments? Yeah?
Oftentimes the stories are shared. Do you think certain types work better for email versus founders?
Thank you. Boy, that's a trick. I don't know the answer. Do certain types work better for females or males? Males have a lot of latitude, I think. So actually, I would rely on all of you to share topics that you may have that you haven't worked because you felt they weren't compatible with being a female founder or something like that. Do you have ideas like that?
I feel like especially ones where you're kind of almost bragging or really saying how great you are. I feel like that's where people especially
Yes, so bragging about how great you are. Sure. So the typical speaker trick, so this is a professional or keynote speaker trick, is you highlight the process or the result or the overall achievement rather than yourself. You were great, but it was because you followed a process or because you felt you had a certain inspiration and you let it play out. So you put yourself a little bit to the side. That's true for males and females. Other questions or comments? Yeah.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can.
So my question was that what if you're a company, you're not looking for funding, but you have a services company or consulting company, and you still need to create a story? How do you go about doing that if you're not pitching to
Right, so
investors?
this is sales. Yes, you need to create a story for marketing or sales, correct? So, anyone want to chime in on that?
case studies.
Case studies are, okay, would that be a story?
Case studies could be
Yeah.
provided as a story.
So my direct answer to that question about you still need a story, I believe it's a story about maybe a multifaceted or multi-threaded story of how, when people work with you, when companies or individuals work with you, they achieve success. And the specific mechanism or uniqueness of how we were able to empower them to succeed. So this is the core fundamental sales approach. Yeah.
Are there behaviors, are there things that you just go here that maybe impact you more than how they
So yes, now it's the women versus men, and we know that it's roughly 2% of funded startups are headed by a woman.
Excuse me, I have a question.
Yeah, I was trying to reflect on I don't know if there's a really obvious answer. It seems some themes are, so I saw a winning pitch a few years ago at South by Southwest. The company was Kindara, a female founder, and the technology had to do with helping women manage their fertility. And she knocked it out of the park. But that was like a super sweet spot. Oh, it's a woman's thing. I want to hear more stories from you all, because I don't feel like I don't see female founders very often. Seriously. Yeah. Now I'm seeing hundreds. Yeah.
We can't hear anything.
Right. So every time there's a why, that's an occasion for a story, to develop a story for it. And it can be just 2 or 3 sentences. Sorry, yeah. You want to end
We have the mic here
reply.
that you can pass along and ask questions.
Okay. So I'm going to roll back to the sequence here in a sec, but please.
Yeah, I have a question. What is the difference between a case
1
study?
second.
I'm just curious, what is the difference between a testimonial and a case study?
Testimonial?
No, what is the difference between a case study and versus a testimonial?
The difference between a case study and a testimonial?
Correct.
Okay, does that make sense to you all? So my off the top would be, the case studies, in my mind, usually come out of larger situations with established companies that they're creating a sort of a profile of here's a process of getting to use our thing, and here's the results, and here's how we know it's continuing to work. Whereas a testimonial is basically some person just saying, hi, I'm the VP of sales at XYZ, and we started using this online marketing package, and our results, trended over the year up 25%. Am I not hitting your...
Well, I just own a lot of products that use testimonials, and I would think that would be very valuable, or research design.
A lot of who use testimonials?
Products, when they're trying to build their products, they
Yeah.
use testimonial, very common, especially in weight loss programs, and also a lot of companies also use research designs, like surveys or focus groups. I mean, right now, the investors are really, really picky, and they really require a substantial amount of research to secure investment.
You're saying venture requires a lot of research to secure?
Yes, investors, yeah.
I suppose.
Yeah.
So I'm going to just put case studies and testimonials in 2 separate buckets. I don't think they're both promoting you. They're both providing evidence that your thing or your offer is great. But to me, case studies they're like white papers. They're kind of paid research that creates a sort of quasi-scientific or quantitative case for how your thing benefits customers. Whereas testimonials are just enthusiastic endorsements. Is that fair? Okay, yeah.
So here's a challenge I've had. You're pitching, a microphone.
I love a microphone.
Oh, good.
So I'm pitching and I'm having a one-on-one and I feel the investor's energy change. I've lost him. And I want to keep going. I got a system, I got a formula, I know what I'm going to say. Do I stop and say, do I address it or do I keep going? Did I not do a good job qualifying up front to understand what he's into and what he wants to hear? Or what his company's investing in. That's an issue I've seen a couple times.
So the question is, when I'm doing a pitch and it's one-on-one, oh, I double mic, that's weird. I hope you can hear me now. When it's one-on-one, are you standing up and doing an actual pitch with slides?
No, one-on-one pitching.
Oh!
Yeah.
Well, if you're just doing conversational style pitching, you totally stop. Yeah, because the most important thing is to have that person with you. Your content is really secondary.
And what if you're in front of a room and you see people start picking up their phones and you've lost half the audience?
If you're in front of a room and you see people picking up their phones and you've lost half the audience, you are kind of thrown upon your wits. So there are different ways of doing that. You know, you can just, if you are keeping sort of track of, you know, how is the pitch unfolding and maybe you think you muffed some stuff or you hurried yourself or so on, you can go back and try to revisit that. Or you can reiterate what you think is your core premise of your company. Or you can just do the, you know, the ballsy thing. Ooh, pardon me, that was but you know, the sort of bold thing of, hey guys, I'm not sure you're all with me, but I hope you will be because in a few minutes you're going to see blah blah growth. So it's very much it's a showbiz kind of a thing. Who owns this mic? I don't own it.
The audience.
And the audience, give it back. Okay, let's move forward, please, but you can still interrupt. The computer died. Brad, I have such high hopes for you. You're so likable.
Sorry.
Oh, man.
Can I ask you a question?
Please.
So, sorry, no mic, I'll try to speak up.
Okay.
Thanks. So, if you are given an opportunity to present in front of a group, but you're not given visuals and you have a product that really is reliant on visuals, how would you best express the story most powerfully?
Come on.
You have a perfect example in front of you right now.
We're going to have a little fun because she's putting a challenge, which I think is a very common challenge, and let's see if we can solve it together.
What's up, ladies?
Oh, it's working now, so.
Okay. So let me tell you about peak focus.
Very briefly.
Very briefly. I had a traumatic brain injury about 6 years ago, and my family came to help me. I was in New York City, and they could only stick around for a week, then they had to leave. So I was relying on my friends and community to help
Were you going to do the whole pitch? We're talking about visuals, right?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So I need to set the content.
I can run men and women equally, sorry.
So my neighbor helped me. He's 92 years old to get walking again. He gave me his cane. And then a few months later, he fell while I was getting better, so I helped him out. And I was realizing that community is really important for having better health after a situation and an injury. So what Peak Focus is building is a dashboard for community to help each other in health situations. And I can't show you a picture of it, but
What was wrong with that? Do you guys have any trouble visualizing a person falling down? Or an old guy? So explain the challenge that you're feeling more directly if you can.
well, did you guys get it when I shared it?
What's the name of it? What's the name?
The product is called Vitality, and my company is Peak Focus, where through advocacy, research, and technology, we're helping communities stay healthier.
That's very good.
I got the problem, I didn't get the solution.
Okay, so I guess I need to clarify that.
So the solution was not very visual. She said dashboard.
Oh,
So that's one of those jargon words that we want to use very lightly.
get volunteers. That's the solution. Get volunteers to help people who need help.
What sells a product is not looking at splashy, pretty graphics at all. I need a microphone, my voice already.
Hi, how you doing? So what tends to sell an idea and sell a product, in my opinion, is not flashy graphics, because I actually don't care about the graphics, because if the underlying problem doesn't need solving or the underlying solution isn't solid and isn't there and there's no story, I don't care how pretty the graphics are. So for something like what you're talking about, I think just telling the story of, hey, people after life events need help from their community, this is a way for the community to come together and an easy solution for them to do so. I think that tells the story of what you're trying to sell. I don't need to see flashy graphics. They don't help.
How about
Or
the,
any graphics. This was the question she
Not
posed
all.
when you don't have any graphics.
How about
You would
the
ordinarily use your arms and the rest of your body language to illustrate.
how about the fires in Santa Rosa? Would that be an event that you would cover?
Oh, absolutely.
So I guess you should answer that question. This is a pretty relevant question.
Yeah. So the question was, is this a product that people up in Santa Rosa who just went through the fires would use? And absolutely. This is a way for families to stay in communication when there's been an immediate event. We actually started developing this product after Hurricane Sandy. So.
Thanks very much. Give her a round of applause, please.
I hope you get funding.
That's a story 4 years in development, so I should just let you know.
So you did get funding.
Been worked very hard.
You did get funding.
Nope, no funding yet.
Oh, okay.
Bootstrapping.
I want to continue a little bit with the package. I have 2 daughters. They're fantastic. One of them's a graduated college. The other was in her 2nd year. And they don't have much to do with me. I'm pretty irrelevant in their lives. But I do remember a few things. So when my oldest was, I don't know, 12, 13, she was at a friend's house, and they were hanging out on a weekend. And the mom there gave them lunch. It was very sweet. So just going good, having old friends, old soccer buddies. And it was tomato soup and chocolate milk.
Wow.
I don't know, not bad. Maybe, but the cold milk after the soup. I don't know if they had bread, but at any rate, from what I understand, at some point my daughter had the great idea of, well, these things kind of look alike. Why don't we just pour the chocolate milk in to the tomato soup? Yeah, so I'm getting some grimaces. Yeah, me too. Like, oh, really? So educational moment, of course. But the real educational moment came a bit later when Diane, the mom, noticed what had happened. She said, "You're eating that." So, it's one of those cute stories. The reason I share this story is that this was a moment when you wanted different soup. You wanted to be able to do something with the soup, but soup has this particular quality, which is, once you make it, it's soup. It's all together, right? You can't tear it apart. And it is also true for the way we behave when we communicate and how we get fixed on a certain way of telling our story conversationally, and then when we get up to pitch, we may feel stuck. We may have these sort of casual habits, non-structure, that weaken it. So the moral of the whole soup story is, if you really want a powerful pitch and you want to be able to tell powerful stories, make new soup. So, Ronnie, what was your name?
Minda.
So Minda had some soup, and it was good soup, but there was a little friction here because I wanted to go directly to the Q&A, and she wanted to just play the pitch. Was that true? Is that fair?
Sure.
Kind of?
Sure.
So this is what we all do, and this is one of the challenges for getting more powerful. And I know this as a trainer because I've trained groups of entrepreneurs, and had like a week before the pitch contest, and we reconstruct it, we rebuild it, and they go, oh, this is so much better. And then I'm there, and they do the old one. Oh, God. So sometimes along the way, you're going to need to make new soup. That's all. Back to this question of story, because now I'm going to dissect stories into some categories I think are really useful and relevant for startup folks. And I don't know what the best story here is, but apparently this person's delivering and the rest are VCs. I don't know. Birds are people. They're very advanced, So what are you aiming for?
Money.
We're aiming for money. That's what I hear. Yes, money, good. How do we get there? So I divide stories into 3 buckets, and my background is with this one, the literary story, which has the formal development of character. It has a really well-defined conflict. It has, a timeline and a resolution, a transformation. You find it in novels and movies and creative journalism, things like that. We're not going to be able to go there, and actually we don't want this because people don't go to a pitch session for the experience. They go for something else. So on the other side is what we do all the time, which is explain stuff. So, I'm really going to be fine, but, I should have paid attention to where I was going with my feet, and I fell down, and it's all fine. So there's these super sloppy explain stuff story of why I have a fractured clavicle. I may go more dramatic with that, but It's just kind of explaining stuff. Maybe there's a timeline, and it doesn't have any particular impact. Although, it can still work because we're still discovering stuff. So as long as we're discovering stuff, we want to get to some kind of answer, we'll keep listening. And then there's this thing in the middle called professional story. So this is the sort of body of what I'm going to share with you today. It's the notion that a story is just an asset. And in order to make that asset get you real traction, it needs to be packaged and delivered in a way that it has the impact it should have. So professional story is what we're going for, and that's what I'm going to be referencing for the rest of the session. So we have a formula. So the story itself is like a payload. It's going to go in here. And these three things that are around the story are things that are often left out. They will be left out because you're using the old soup. And you haven't had the practice or the exposure to more powerful ways. People familiar with the word gravitas? A little bit? Yeah? So it used to be something we talk about for presidential candidates. Used to be. Doesn't matter anymore. It's irrelevant. But it's also a word that's used in executive circles referring to someone who has a commanding presence. And I put it here for introducing stories because I think stories, if they're really going to be a powerful story, like an Amy Cuddy story or a Brene Brown story, they need to be marked out as a dramatic event, as not the usual patter, patter, patter of the presentation, but that I want to tell you a story. So I'm going to dip into gravitas a little bit. And then the setup linkage is simply telling me that it's worth listening to because it's relevant to the question at hand. So if you're talking about a startup, you want to let them know before you launch in the story that this is going to show something about your marketing strategy and how successful it is. So then you tell a story, which we're going to go to as well, and then you got to tell them what you told them. So in high school, my brother was 5 years older, and he delivered this great wisdom to me. I was struggling on an essay. He said, tell them what you're going to tell them, and tell them you told them. Who's heard this? It's actually pretty smart. It sounds incredibly pedestrian, but it's pretty smart. Okay. So you know who this lady is?
Yeah, she's a judge.
She's a Supreme Court Justice. She's one of the 4 in upcoming years, unfortunately. And I have a lot of respect for her, and she is definitely a no-nonsense person. So, here is where we're going to come to a male, potentially, or female polarity. My belief is that most women tend to favor being friendlier and more sort of fun and easygoing in a persona, and that this is not like that. So it's useful really to have some Ruth Bader Ginsburg in you when you're at the front of the room and people are messing with you or not taking you seriously or not appreciating the importance of what you're going to deliver.
Amen.
But this happens for men and women both. So I'm in a Toastmaster club that's entrepreneurial oriented in Silicon Valley. We do pitch practice and we have a lot of people coming through who are starting companies. And many times people just get up there and they're just friendly and nice and everything. And when you're always friendly and nice, how can you get someone to appreciate that people are in pain? Or that people are suffering? Or that people are missing opportunities? You need to have this gravitas. So let's go a little bit deeper there. I wish I could have found her standing up, but she's pretty serious right there already. Who's read Leaned In? Yeah? So I tried to boil this down to a really simple formula, and I'm going to maybe ask someone who's to demo this. How do you have gravitas? Number 1, you stop moving. This is the hardest thing ever for many people in the front of the room. In particular, authority means that you don't really have any motion from the waist down. You might think of this in biological terms. In the world of, wild creatures, a predator doesn't wiggle around because it's not afraid of anything. It's not going anywhere. It's just evaluating, is that lunch? But prey, they're like checking it out from all angles all the time. So my belief is that even in the human world where we have so much culture and language and sophistication, those circuits are still operating. So to be authoritative, you need to stop moving. And especially the, kind of, oh no, blah. Now you're going to be really, really blunt and simple. So we stop. We slow down. We slow. This is my biggest weakness as a presenter, is that I go too fast, I get breathless, people go, Roy, I couldn't follow you. So slow down, which marks the introduction of your story. Naturally, you're going to be serious. And another huge challenge for all of us, be really simple. Be really simple. So if you've got a story about customer success, you want to be able to say things like, she called us up, we, created an account for her, she started using, she got her data in, and within a week, half of her troubles were gone. Within 2 more weeks, she had 0 issues with her clients because everyone was using the platform. This is very simple. So leaders don't get involved in details when they're in front of a room. They stay really simple. Comments or questions on this one? Yes?
Is it always important to stand up when you're doing a pitch?
Thank you. Is it important to stand up? I believe it's really helpful. I also believe it's a bold move, it's a commanding move, and it shows confidence. So I would recommend, unless it's definitively awkward. So if you're stuck in a really small room and standing up would make you tower, then maybe not. But you definitely want to be claiming space, and ideally you stand up and take a step back so that the other person is comfortable. And yeah, you can pitch to a single person standing up, no problem. Okay. Now to linkage. Linkage is basically the clickbait, which needs to be there to make the listener really confident that what you're going to say is relevant to the question at hand, and it doesn't need to be much, but it needs to be included. So this is the wrapping that makes a story into a professional story. So you slow down, you create some space, you're serious, you're saying, I really want to share with you a story of what happened in the last 2 weeks with our signups. Because I think it indicates how much power the solution potentially has. Well then, now we come to the part that we love to celebrate, which is the actual story itself. And there are so many formulas and so many ways I could talk about stories that I had to pick and choose a few key traits to help you focus and notice ways to be stronger in the story. And this is the very short list I came up with. Conflict. Oh, Brad. There we go. People know who Aaron Sorkin is? Yeah, he's a very celebrated screenwriter, movie scriptwriter as well. And he has online training with this outfit called Masterclass. I don't know their startup story, but they have very famous individuals in the creative arts teaching. And one of the promos has him explaining the process of writing. And what he says is, okay, before I can do anything, I have to have somebody who wants something. Doesn't matter what they want, but they gotta want it bad. They need to get to Pittsburgh, they need to get the guy, or get the deal, or they need to win the prize, and they need to have an opponent that's formidable. And without that, I can't start writing. What he said is, yeah, if I don't have that, I'll do what I used to do when I was in my 20s. I'd type a bunch of pages of punchy dialogue and go nowhere. So you need a conflict. And well, we know what's at stake here. These are men, I know about them. But a curious thing about conflict that I'm really actually working out just in the last few days is that I put the word conflict because it's the classic ingredient if you look at literary stories, and sort of academic discussion of how does a story work. Oh, conflict. But we don't always have explicit conflict. In our stories, what we often have is the implicit conflict of, oh man, I'm injured, are they going to take care of me? So I could just start telling a story of how I got treatment for my shoulder, and you would be into the conflict already because you'd be like wanting to ride along and see if the right thing happened. So I wouldn't have to have an enemy, but I still have the conflict. I have this sense of something's at risk, something's at stake. We're dissatisfied. Are we going to see a solution? Are we going to make progress?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
That was so kind. Thank you.
how did she guess you thirsty?
Must have been that scratchy sound I'm making. I have used a visual example here to try to dramatize the value of having explicit details in the story. So for example, if I was going to do the arm thing again, I might mention that I really had no idea until I saw the x-ray that there was like a finger-width gap between the two sides of my clavicle. And I got a creepy feeling, thinking, oh, there's jagged bones in there and nothing's holding it. So that is the power of detail. And I want two contrasting visual representations. This is from a recipe post blog. So you can see it's all very clean and composed. There's no real fire. And there's not a human. It's all about the food. Compared to, check this out. You've got a relationship, you've got the fire, the smoke, the heat, you've got potential disaster when the pan falls off. You've got some kind of story scenario of this couple. Are they getting along or not?
But we don't see the food.
What?
We don't see the food detail.
You don't see the food detail because this one's not about food. This is about human dynamics, which all stories should be about. Stories about food don't mean anything. Stories about people and their feelings. So one of the easiest ways to bring detailed grittiness into a story is to actually do dialogue. He said, and she said, and I said, what do you mean it's going to cost $50 to park? And she said, well, you're here late, didn't make an appointment, but I used Spot Hero, what's going on? Whatever. So having dialogue is the cheapest, quickest way to add a sense of reality to the story.
But there is no conflict. They're just cooking something.
There's no conflict in the food. Would you agree there's no conflict in the food picture?
No, in the couple, they seem at peace. There's
Yeah,
no
the couple, are they at peace? I don't know.
They cook
But the
together.
point of that picture was to show that you can have a lot of elements in a visual scene that make it more interesting and expose more possibilities. So unrealized possibilities are what suspense is about. Yes?
So in the last photo, I wasn't totally buying it, and I think because, as you said at the beginning, you need to keep it simple. So I'm trying to figure out how you're illustrating something and showing multiple things to distract the viewer from the thing you're trying to convey.
Right. So it appears that I'm advocating using a picture like this. Well, what actually I'm advocating is painting a story that is rich. But if I were to take this picture,
They're happy.
I don't think he's that happy. He looks uncomfortable. They're trying to collaborate over the top of a very hot fire that's very smoky. And I think that things might explode at any minute. Seriously. No. Okay. So is it because cooking together? Is that the magic thing?
They try to get along.
So I'm not promoting the picture. I'm promoting the concept of being rich in your imagery when it helps, when you need it. So if I were just going to say this, what if I were, see, what am I selling that picture? Well, camp stoves. Are they, you remember camping with your parents and they would have this old pump-up stove and you put the white gas in there and it was always a little rickety and a little spooky? Nobody remembers that. So I'm so old. But it turns out they're actually really useful and they're better. So because this is the experience you're going to have with that one. And this may look like fun, but half the time I can tell you the pot is going to fall into the fire. Okay. I'll illustrate this point simply by sharing that I had the fracture and immobilization is the treatment, but then I had a horrible experience where I got a little too bold and too brave, and maybe I was just stupid. And I was walking a dog, going through a gate, heavy gate, the big spring, and as I'm doing that, another dog appears, and this dog barks and started to run away. And the next thing I know, my elbow or my shoulder hurts like heck. So I had to go back to the doctor. And I could feel this bump there. And it was just, oh, this jagged bone is in there. But you know what? It turns out that the ligament was just stretched. Huh. So that was a little minor surprise. No bone, just a ligament. And then we're going to close by telling them what you told them. But not really what you told them, the meaning of what you told them is the key thing. Okay. It's time to play. Go back. You want to see all that? Okay.
Yeah, we didn't see it.
Sorry. I've been looking at this for weeks. What's wrong with you?
You know it, but we don't.
Yes.
I find that most pitches that you do are, I find that most pitches that you do or that you get asked to do are 3 minutes, 5 minutes. I mean, and you have to cover so much that how do you get that rich story in there without taking up time about the business model and and what you're raising the funds for and your traction, etc.
Thank you. So the question is, in a 5-minute or even a 3-minute pitch, how do you get a rich story in there? You probably don't, but you have it for Q&A. And you can hint at it, and you can crystallize it. So it is possible in many ways to crystallize a story. It takes more craft and work, but it's doable. It's not I know it's not a very satisfying answer. Yeah?
If you don't mind, I add on to that. I always look at that 3-minute pitch as getting them hooked. So they want to ask the question, well, what is your business model? What is your funding for? So those 3 minutes should often be to tell the story that makes people enough to go, I'll give you 2 more minutes, I'll give you 3 more minutes, I want to ask 4 more.
Yeah. So we want a story that has some wow factor that gets them hooked. Okay. Other comments at this point? We're almost to the, yeah.
Very often the consumer stories are like this, where it's very easy to express it. But in enterprise kind of solutions, you don't have those, stories that everybody will relate to. So how do you use these techniques when you have a product that's more focused on a company or an enterprises?
How do you use these techniques when you have an enterprise offering that's more focused on companies? Yeah. My claim is that you can use them in a very similar way because every problem of an enterprise ends up being dumped on somebody's desk. And that person really cares about the result. So that would be my advice, is to start with that person's story, so to speak, and how it changes what they do and what they have time for and how great their job is or how lousy it is. I'm the mic runner too.
What do you mean by crystallize a story?
Sure. What do you mean by crystallize a story? Oh, she's fallen into my trap. Okay, I get to quote Hemingway. A one-line story. For sale. Baby shoes, white, never worn. Okay, I went into literary, but nonetheless, you can hint at great results or great promise, and it just, there is no, it's the mystery of human creativity. I can't give a formula for that, but it's possible. So if we have someone up here to do some work, we might just discover it. So I'm looking for some volunteers. 1 or 2? Please. Hey, welcome. Hi, I'm Roy. What's your name? Arishika. Sweet. So you're a founder.
Yes.
And you've been doing pitching or
Yeah.
discussions, and you have stories you work with?
Yeah. A couple of them.
So do you have one that you'd like to share and see if we can develop?
I think this problem that most of the women can relate to is going to a new city and trying to find a dance class or a yoga class and then not being able to find one with
Good.
an instructor you like.
That's good. Could you do that and be less friendly, take a side step, and look really serious.
Have you ever been to a city where
I like it. I don't know. Does that feel different?
not to me?
How serious is the problem?
Not sure.
Well, I'm sure it's extremely serious.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that it's serious because it affects our overall mental health, well-being, and physical health altogether, and gives us community. So being in a new city and having a rich part of our lifestyle ripped away from us sucks a lot. So that is my demo of crystallization and gravitas.
Use Google, google.com.
Every class has a wisecracker. There's a woman who's very insistent in the back. Let's go see what she has to say. Don't move.
I just would like to challenge your be serious point. I've had and I've heard a lot of pitches, and the most grasping ones were the ones that actually were less serious. So I would definitely challenge that one and maybe explain it a bit more, because I think you can make a point while not being serious. Maybe you're just making the point about being female and male, which is sexism. But yeah, I would just like to have a more explanation around the be serious point.
So I'm being challenged about the need to be serious, and I welcome that. That's cool. What I would start off by saying is that communication is a world of contrasts. And so until there's a contrast, we don't tend to notice it as much. So I am not advocating that everyone be, as stiff as Roy, and definitely not this. But what I am advocating is that you make a break from normalcy in some fashion, which probably includes being static, or slowing down, or making some other delivery change that indicates a shift. So it's not that I'm trying to make everyone serious and talk like Abe Lincoln, but I do believe a shift is required, and I would actually push back a little bit. I believe that if you're going to develop an emotional impact with the audience, you need to go beyond being friendly. You need to be the grown-up in the room a little bit of the time. Not always. I'm not convincing her. Yes. So it could be, so if you're doing a very dry presentation and then you're going to go to a story and the story is humorous, yeah, the contrast might swing the other way. But you need to make a contrast. So people, we want to help her practice here. Is that okay with you guys? Okay. I won't interrupt you this time. So you've got a story you're going to deliver, and we'll talk about it.
With a serious tone, or can it be
As you like.
Okay.
As you like.
So now you guys know my problem, and how many people can relate to it? Beautiful. Not so many. Okay, like going to a city and finding a class, maybe dance or yoga or boxing or whatever, and liking the instructor as much as you did last time, or just going on a spree and finding the classes that you like and keep it on a tab so that you can repeat and go for the same classes over the whole month. Yes, so that's what I'm working on, and my startup is called Zydness. ZYDNESS stands for Zumba, Yoga, Dance, Ninjutsu, Exercise, Sports and Specials. Keep a lookout on that on the App Store, and I'm going to launch it for Christmas as a gift to all of you.
That was fun. How sweet. I definitely think the friendly thing, this is a room full of women, and, by the way, this is not a pitch. It's a sales message. How cool would that be? So investors don't think that way. They think about, can your enterprise be successful? Does it deserve to be funded? So this is where seriousness comes in. You would want to share. You could say, next time. I was in a room with, 200 active women who are all concerned with, their health and vitality, and they love this idea. In fact, I got spontaneous applause. That's the story. Yeah. Would you go with that?
Yes, I would, and I see how it's closing linkage, and I think it's more effective and impactful when you share an instance from the past rather than sharing an opinion or judgment. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thanks for practicing with me. All right. I can't do the yoga, it's just humiliating. Just, I tried. Who's next? Please, we've just got a minute or two. Yeah? I'm sorry, she's on her way. Here you go.
Hi, my name is Celine. I'm the founder of a card called Rally, and it's the first women's credit card. The way it works is every time you use it, we get back free money from your favorite brands, and we automatically invest it for you. This idea came up a couple years ago. I had a great job. I was getting a great paycheck, but I wasn't really saving money or investing it the way that I felt like I should. So I started kind of using other apps that exist like Robinhood, Acorns, but it really didn't, it wasn't really working for me. So I thought this idea is great because, I get to go to the stores that I go to and then save the money and auto-invest it.
Okay, so here, what we're seeing is we're not seeing stories per se, we're seeing the explain stuff version of stories, which is okay. So I would like you to share, what was your name?
Celine.
Share for Celine your reactions about how she can improve that and make it more impactful.
I think you have a great product, so you should believe in it. Not when you say, I think it's kind of cool, it is cool. And I think the point he was making about being serious is being confident. You have a cool idea, so it is a great product. It is really cool. I think would really help, because it is a really cool, awesome product. So I don't think you need to say, I think, just say it is.
Thank you. There's really disappointing research about how males evaluate women pitching, and they often devalue their credibility or strength or things like that. So be aware. Who wants to practice? Or it's finding someone who hasn't spoken. Your feedback, please.
Yeah, I would just emphasize more why it's a cool product. Is the return on investment good? Is it going to the right causes? Or what is it that makes it better than the others?
A guy? Are you a guy? Oh, okay. Sorry.
That's okay. I think that you, in the spirit of providing more color, could craft a story around, you said, oh, I had this great paycheck, but it wasn't working out for me. So, how did you feel that? How did it impact you? What specifically happened? And give us a little bit more about, your personal experience with investing or lack thereof.
Personal experience, yes. I need to close. Celine, thanks very much. And this much is better. You came in here with soup, you're going to depart with the same soup. However, I hope and believe, and you can certainly look back at these slides to help remind you, that maybe you'll be inspired to stretch a little bit, to craft a little bit, and get something that works better. Because what could be nicer than seeing this? Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, Roy. This was great. Thank you so much. Well, everyone, before we break out the lunch, I want to remind you that at 1:30 we are going to have 2 tracks happening at the same time. So 1:30 we're going to be back here for another talk. And from 1:30 to 3:30 we're going to start the mentoring sessions. So please come and join the mentoring session 10 minutes. Come 10 minutes before the session, so you can find the table that you're assigned to. And have a great lunch, and I'll see you here at 1:30.